Good morning. We are with Chief Duggan with the Northampton Fire Department, and I wanted to talk to him about the temporary rubberized features that we placed on Meadow Street in Florence on May 30th, 2008. We're interested to find out how these vertical deflections affected the vehicles that you had at the presentation.
Thank you, Lori. I think it was, first of all, a good opportunity for us to participate in the presentation, in that it allowed firefighters at the street level to really get involved and have some input into a process going forward. All too often, I think fire departments across the country are sort of weighing in against some of the traffic calming measures, and our strategy was by involving people to really get what would work for us and what wouldn't work. During that day, we had an ambulance and an engine company on hand. Both navigated through the two traffic calming devices multiple times. And I think all in all what we found is that on primary response routes, the speed bump created a hazard for us. And that's primarily with larger fire apparatus, an engine company, a ladder truck. We found that even at 20 miles an hour, there was enough deflection of the unit that we questioned at one point if it had damage in suspension. Those are vehicles that are traveling with large quantities of either weight or water. An ambulance can navigate through that much easier, although the speed is really a concern when it comes to patient care. So I think all in all, in summary, it was a very good day. It was something that both the department learned from and I think projected some knowledge forward. That larger vehicles on primary emergency response routes really shouldn't have an obstacle to navigate over that could compromise them. And even at 20 miles an hour, that really presents a significant hazard for us, because when we're going to a structure fire or major emergency, it's not realistic that we're going to come to almost a dead stop or 10 miles an hour to get over something like that. And those are situations where truly seconds count. So that applies to the primary emergency response routes. I think there are other areas of the community that may be appropriate for, where either would be going much slower to begin with, or that those aren't sort of corridors that are used on a regular basis. The second method, where the traffic cushions were used and there was sort of in the middle the ability to have dual tires navigate through, I found that to be much more effective. And I think our people walked away with that feeling that whether it's an ambulance or a fire truck, having the ability to navigate into the middle of the roadway, which is something we routinely do in an emergency, and then take that middle of the roadway without going over a deflection that thus could cause damage to an apparatus or to a patient, would be much preferable to the solid speed pump that was in place.
Thank you very much for attending that presentation, and I'm glad it was helpful for you. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. We're here with Sergeant Andy Trushaw, who is the traffic supervisor for the Northampton Police Department. And Andy has offered to give us an interview concerning the police department's point of view with the traffic calming temporary features that we had placed on Meadow Street on May 30th. So thank you, Andy, for taking time to talk with me today. And what is the consensus of the police department about these features?
Well, we thought it was a great thing to have down there, to actually be able to drive over the humps, get some of the guys down there to see how these things really work. It was great to set them up. They set up two styles. I believe it was the humps and the cushions, right. Our vehicles had no problem. We used one of the newer cruisers, just a couple months old, to do most of the testing, and I believe we used a detective car as well, which is basically a car that's been taken offline. Same thing, it's a cruiser. We have heavy-duty suspension, so they go over them easier, much like a top-end BMW, Lexus type car would probably have no problem going over these. Our feeling on it didn't affect our cars badly at all. Our cars would be able to negotiate both styles very well, and again, I think that's because of the heavy-duty suspension that we do have in the vehicles. We all noticed that the fire trucks had a lot more with the weight, a lot of noise, and definitely could see the problems with that. Would they work for us? Probably. With the sedans, the smaller vehicles going over them, we wouldn't have any problems with the placement of them, but we'd have to acquiesce to the fire chief, and I know he's got some issues because of very practical issues with the vehicles going over them and having issues with damage to vehicles and response times, and that's basically where we are.
Okay. I also wondered, during that experiment, could you tell me what speeds you were going? I know you went back and forth over these features several times, and I wasn't too sure what speeds you tried.
We tried normal speed, 30, 35 on many of them with the bumps, and both of them weren't too bad either one. We also took through a test. I believe I was going about 60 to 62 miles an hour. Again, not a problem with the heavy-duty suspension. Felt a little bump, but they're made for, pursuit driving, and they went over them, what I would say, very well. No loss of control or whatnot. As long you obviously know it's coming up, so you prepare for it. But it didn't make the vehicle veer off in any way. It seemed to traverse them very well.
So does the police department have an opinion concerning their placement on a primary response route or a secondary response route?
I would think not on a primary, definitely a primary, and probably a secondary response route, because many times, again, not for the police departments, but for the fire departments and ambulances, they're carrying a lot of equipment and going over them, and time is of the essence in many cases. So I think that, with our partners out there, the ambulance and fire, responding to these things, I think our stance is that we have to look at more of their response than ours. As an average everyday thing, I think they could work for police vehicles, but the other response vehicles, which many times are as important, if not more important, for the time factor to get there. A fire, I've seen it 1,000 times. The response is absolutely critical. Within 2 to 3 minute delay, because they have to go over some speed bumps, could be the difference in a life or death or huge loss of property. And same with the ambulance, obviously.
Thank you very much, Andy.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to interview Jim Dostal, who was a passenger in the ambulance. You want to tell me about your experience, Jim?
Well, actually, the ride was pretty smooth. When we hit the first speed bump at the speeds that they were traveling, it was not bad. My suggestion was that if the patient is coherent, to say to the patient, we're going to hit a speed bump now. But when they went for the second one, where there is actually wheel wells that they can drive through, and they barely touch them.
We're talking about these speed cushions here that we've got right behind us here.
Right.
Okay.
And barely feel it, so it's very, very comfortable in there.
Oh, that's good to hear about.